Welcome to Chess, ladies and gentlemen. Man, I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. I figured I would greet you the way that they do in India, since I have an Indian player. I'll get to that in a minute. But I went ahead and went back a little bit. I have a Title Tuesday, a late Title Tuesday game between Wesley and Raunak Sadhwani coming at you. So, of course, all my people that are coming from the Philippines, it's almost afternoon. So, a little bit of magandang umaga, magandang alpon. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Kamusta na, aking mga kaibigan? Appreciate you very much, man. Anybody who is coming from India, I believe it's Maharashtra. It is the region that Raunak Sadhwani is from, so that is some Marathi. So I will say namaskar and dhanyavada. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. But man, if you guys are ready to go home, and let's take a look, see what we got for this game. So we got the move B3. So, a little bit down on the list. B3 is definitely playable. It does kind of cede a little bit of an advantage to black straight out of the opening. You do kind of have to play a certain way. If not, black will definitely get an initiative and some damage against you. So we do see the move E5. Generally, you're going to try to at least get, one of your central pawns out. Because as I always say, black and white both are trying to get generally, from a classical standpoint, they're wanting to get that perfect center. E5, D5, D4, E4 like that. We do see bishop to B2. We got knight to C6. We got E3. And pretty much like 90% of the games when you do play the Nimzo-Larsen attack are going to go in this fashion. This is by far one of the best ways to play. You're basically with this bishop targeting this really nice central pawn. And you are almost always going to see a bishop to B5. We do see knight to F6. You kind of have two options here. You can either just completely play with the center, or you can go knight here. Both of them do allow bishop to b5, and that is one of the main ideas, like I was saying before, just trying to undermine the protection of that pawn. So we got knight to f6, we got bishop to b5, and then we do have queen to e7. It's crazy because queen to e7 is very rarely played on the list of moves, but it is actually one of the best moves in the position, so it's kind of crazy. But we do see knight to f3, and then we do see the move e4. What you see more of in this exact position is knight to e2. And I believe it is to just basically, avoid the whole e4 tempo game. And you still have a chance to influence the d4 square. So you might be possibly eyeing a d4 push after you get castled. So we do see e4, and then knight goes to d4. And we are in pretty rare waters. So the players have been able to manage to kind of get away from the super mainline theory and kind of play their own kind of game. We do see queen down to e5. The bishop behind the knight is undefended. Queen to e5 just does a good thing to kind of pin that down. We see bishop back to e2. We see queen over to g5. And basically, Sadhwani is like, bro, I'm going to attack you if you plan to castle kingside. And Wesley says, I don't even care, bro. I'm going to go castles anyway. So there's definitely some ideas here, when you do have the queen, getting in such aggressive positions. We do see the move bishop to c5, and this is actually the novelty of the game. What we have seen before in this position is actually d5, and you'll kind of see me explain a little bit about, what d5 is doing coming up, but we'll get on with it right now. Bishop comes to c5. In this exact position, the absolute best way to play would be to just take this knight off the board with knight takes d4. Bishop takes d4 and then d5. And it kind of goes along with, what happened in the game. It's just a slight difference in the situation. Like I said, we did see bishop to c5. We got knight to b5 because why not threaten a fork on the king and the rook, homie? But we do see bishop to b6, just taking care of that. Bishop does take f6. And even though it might look kind of strange, we see G taking f6. And there is a lot of pressure, actually, because what black has done is they've just opened their king side. They haven't committed their king anywhere, but they do have some pressure here. And then once we see the idea of the game, after we see c4 and d5, and you see what the idea is. The knight is not in its natural square on f3, so this does make white vulnerable to some attack. And, sometimes when you get in those positions, you can lose a rook. Lose the exchange. So we do see pawn taking d5, and then we immediately see bishop to h3. And black is saying, bro, I just want to checkmate you, man. Can you just go to sleep and just forget that I'm checkmating you and let me checkmate you and we go home and everybody's happy? except you're sad. We do see the move G3, and this does give the exchange with bishop taking F1. We got queen taking F1, queen taking D5, of course, and then we do see knight 1 to C3. And in the game, we actually see queen to E5, which might look kind of strange because if we back up, doesn't it kind of seem like that pawn is just grabbable on D2? Well, it actually is. That is definitely a move that you can make. Queen taking D2. You have a slight advantage as black, though, so it is saying that certain queen moves are more advantageous. But, I mean, if you're like Yasser Seirawan, you just want to grab some material, by all means, have at it. The queen can take on D2, and you might see queen to H3, but, I mean, black is just good a pawn. So, I mean, you are preventing black from castling in this position, but, I mean, you know, if you feel like a pawn is compensation, then by all means. So we see queen to E5, like I said. We got queen to H3 anyway, and then we have F5 because, of course, that queen was preventing you from castling queenside, which is ideally where you want to go so that you can attack on this beautiful open G file and use the F pawns dynamically. So we do see a rook over to D1. We got castles by black, long castles. Knight goes down to A3, and we have a definite idea. We're down in exchange as white, so we have to try to get some benefit material-wise. So we do see king over to B8. We got knight over to C4, and this does fork the queen and the bishop. So it might kind of seem like white is going to be winning at least the bishop, but no. Queen goes up to E6, and Wesley So basically is like, that's not good enough. I actually think it was better to take B6 because at least you damage the structure and you do get, you know, a bishop for a knight. And you really have to kind of grab at stuff like that when you are down in exchange because black has a little bit less nice pawn structure. And then they would be having a worse structure with the bishop being gone. So, I mean, it can definitely give you some stuff. But we did not see that. We see pawn taking D3. And let me see here. Okay, I'm good. Okay. Pawn takes D3. We see bishop taking D3. Queen goes over to F6. And you do kind of have to be careful in these positions because you do have this rook kind of, you know, vulnerable if you do move the bishop. So you definitely don't want to just go grabbing the pawn right away and then you give your only bishop away. You have to be careful about that stuff. So we do see knight to E2. We got knight to B4 challenging that bishop. We do see knight up to F4. And then we do see knight taking D3. And rook taking D3. And we got rook taking D3 and knight taking D3. So we have lost the rook that we had. So we are really kind of down to full exchange. So one of the major things that white has to try to make sure they're doing is to keep black structure bad with these double pawns on the F file. And you also want to super coordinate your knights and try to create some threats. And the coordination is the key when you are down in these kinds of positions. It is definitely favorable for black by far. So we got to see if Wesley So can actually come back and do something. So we do see queen to A1 with check. The king goes to G2. We do see the loss of a pawn on A2. And that is actually legitimately a pawn. I mean, black just kind of won the pawn. So we do see queen taking F5 and then queen taking B3. And this position is a little bit favorable for black. And even though you had to kind of do it to maintain some equality material-wise, you know, queen taking F5 does kind of relieve black of one of their major weaknesses in their position. So we do see knight D to E5, and even more so than before, you know, you see black really doesn't have any, you know, they don't really have too many weaknesses. This is open, but the king is on the other side of the board. You know, you can always move the king over, which is what you see coming up here, just so that you're not subject to any checks, possibly winning the bishop. But we do see the move H4. We got A5. And, I mean, you do kind of have a lot of pass pawns on this queen side over here, homie. So you got to be careful if you are on the white side. You do see queen up to F6. I mean, why not tickle this rook, bro? I mean, what do you have to lose, homie? We do see a rook over to B8. We got queen taking F7. You absolutely have to try to get as much material as you can. Also, too, something in this position is if white can do kind of what they need to do, they can put a position on the board where this knight check here can be deadly. So black has to be paying attention to that. And we see that Sadhwani is. He says, hey, bro, I got A4 going on. If you do want to have one of those discoveries going on, it doesn't matter because my queen is protected and we're good. So the knight comes up to D7. We see rook over to D8. We see knight taking Knight D taking B6 with check. Pawn taking B6. We do see queen going to C7. And we have actually reached a position in the game that I honestly think that nobody is going to get this move. When I saw the move, I was like, what? And then I understood the whole point overall. But, like I said, I think this is a very, very hard move to find in this position. If you want to pause the video and try to guess this impossible move, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. I think if I was on the black side, I don't think I would do this, to be honest with you. So, I mean, I'm with y'all if you don't decide to do this. The top move in the position is actually king to A7, which I know it looks very strange because you're like, wait a minute, I'm just going to hang my rook for no reason. If you did think of this move, then you are like the most gangster person ever, because you are understanding that these pawns, especially this pawn, is so passed and so strong that you can actually trade down into a favorable winning, completely winning endgame if this is what you choose to do. But like I said, I mean, sometimes people are material. I think king to A7 is a really hard move to find. So don't feel bad if you didn't find it. Sadhwani actually didn't find it himself. He went rook to D5, which is, I mean, kind of like strange to me because this is like a fork. So it has to be time trouble that like caused him to make this move. Maybe he pre-moved, I don't know. But like I said, going back to king to A7, you want to allow the queen to take there, and then you take yourself. And then after possibly queen goes to F8 to stop your pawn from going down, you would possibly see queen to C3. And you are just a little bit faster than black can be. Plus, I mean, the king is really kind of weak on these light squares. So you have a little bit going for you in that particular situation as well. So this is completely winning if you want to go into this thing. So if you found king to A7, man, I got to give it to you, homie. But like I said, Sadhwani did not see this. And you do kind of have to still play a little bit safe if you are white, because you are down quite a bit positionally, even though it's a dead draw. You do see knight takes B6 with check. That's what we saw in the game. The king comes down to A7, and then we do see knight to C8. It was definitely suggested to play knight takes D5 and then just try to blockade that pawn on the A file somehow. But we do see knight going to C8 with check. And then we do see king down to A6. Queen goes to B8. Rook goes to A5. And this actually, you see the bar going crazy. This actually gives, if Wesley So can find it, this gives Wesley So a complete win. And he does find it. Queen goes to A7 with check. King goes down to B7. And then you have the nice check, queen to B6 with check. The king literally can only go to this square, and then you have just won an entire piece. But like I said, you do have to be careful with this passed pawn on the A file. We got the move A3. I mean, what better time for you to push your passed pawn than right now? Because you are kind of down material-wise. Knight goes to B6 with check. We see king down to D3. We got the move E4. You know, I mean, pushing a pawn, bro. Like, are you gonna get another queen? Like, what are we doing? We do see the move A2. I mean, you have nothing to lose by pushing this pawn. Maybe in a dream world, maybe you can get it to A1 and you can make black, make white give their queen up. We do see knight to D5. We see king to C4. We see knight back to B6. We got king to D3. For any of those that might be wondering, this position is actually coming with a pretty deadly threat. If you really don't do anything, let's say you move a pawn or something, if queen takes here and the queen takes, you actually have a fork like so. So that is why you see the move king to C4. After this, like I said, we went down to D3. We see knight going back to D5, and then black continues. So we say, hey, man, I don't want to draw because I'm winning. So we do see knight to E3 with check. King goes down to D3. So we definitely do not want to go to D5 and just make a draw. So we do go ahead and push the E pawn. We got queen down to B2, getting ever closer to the situation where we can push this pawn. But the problem is this actually completely blunders because it is going to be forcing black into a fork. We do see queen to D5 with check. King goes to D3. It's the only move. And you guys might be able to see it. Knight to D1. It actually took Wesley So one more move to find this. And he repeats position. He goes queen to C4 with check. King goes to D2. The king goes back to D5. And then we see Sadhwani go back into that fork. And the second time around, Wesley So finds it. We do see knight down to D1 with check. And I didn't watch the video, so I don't know like what Sadhwani's response to this was. But I mean, I know I'm throwing stuff, bro. Like I'm like, no, like I can't flip this desk. It's like 200 pounds. But yeah, I'm mad, bro. Like it sucks. So king goes to c2. We see knight taking b2. We got a1 queens. We do see knight to c4, and it might kind of look like black can go on just a little bit. But it is in this position that Raunak Sadhwani does resign the game. And he's like, bro, I just don't want no more of it, man. It's really going to be very hard for you to stop this pawn from advancing. You can try to come up here and do it that way. Knight up here is going to pretty much ensure that it goes up. If you try to come behind, you can always push the pawn and just block, you know, throw the knight in the way, and now you don't have a clear line of sight. There's always going to be something that white is going to be able to do to get their queen. So that is going to be the end of that. So I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Maraming salamat aking makaibigan. Pausa na nunod inga king my video. Mabuting pagbati. Ingat lagi to you. Down to Yavada for anybody coming from India. And I'll see you guys next time.